Hello everyone. Today I am here to discuss with you why fiction matters to human beings. One of the most influential authors that have been there from the beginning of my life have been Eva Ibbotson, Enid Blyton, and Mitch Albom, and Meg Cabot. Every girl's favorite author, right? And you must also be wondering why I have not mentioned Harry Potter until now. Well, even though it was there around that time, I never picked up Harry Potter because I was really absorbed in other books. And I don't think that I need to be ashamed or embarrassed or regretful that I did not read it when they were at the height of their popularity. And I still do not regret that I read it when I became an adult because those books are still very timeless, very effective, and very influential in today's life. So a lot of people think that fiction is not useful or helpful in life. Well, I have a mouthful of sentences for you which would convince you otherwise, because it's one of the most important and most effective tool for your imagination and your mental development. Thanks to my family, my school library, and a lot of friends who have been there and have helped me grow my love for books. Fiction is not lies. It is reality warped with extra intellect and imagination. I was a sort of student at school who was not very good at school, but I was a great reader. And yes, those kind of people exist in life and reality. This video might not also have very subtle recommendations as to what kind of books taught me what kind of lessons, and I'm very excited to share that with you. I'm really happy to share why fiction has been so important to me in my life. So during school, I always had a very difficult time grasping concepts of mathematics, history, geography, political science, biology, chemistry, physics, all these kind of concepts, but history and political science still comes a little more easily to me, and especially through historical fiction that I have read throughout my time, I have really learned to put the fictional part aside from the actual reality, and that really builds your brain. It teaches you to put a line between what really happened, because what happens is that in historical fiction the story is set around that period, so the circumstances are those periods and our characters are not real, but they're based in that time and how would they have survived during that time. And that is what historical fiction is. And it taught me about the time when Hitler was setting up concentration camps, and he was terrible. He distinguished between Jews and Christians and Muslims and everyone. And of course, he only wanted one kind of religion to be happening in only one color, which is white. And through him, we learned about white supremacy. Through him, we learned about dictatorship. And whenever I read about him in historical fiction, I find out a little more. I have enough common sense to put aside the imaginative part of the author, but also appreciate it at the same time. I also learned of Prejudice through books like 1984 by George Orwell, where we follow this power called the Big Brother, and there is surveillance, there is a constant war going on in that world, and we have a character, Winston, who is really torn between following what he's being told to do and to rebel. And there are various other books like Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston, which has taught me to learn about the American system. So we have Alex Claremont Diaz, our first son of America, and Prince Henry of Britain. And they have to put up this fake friendship, which turns into a lot more. So it concentrates on LGBTQ rights and how they're being taken away from both these characters. I have learned so much from these books in really little ways because they just act as a backdrop for our characters to come up with their own choices and decisions. And I really like that. I love learning through fiction, and that is my way of registering information. So there's so many great books out there that give you the lens from the protagonist's point of view, where they show how the protagonist deals with such circumstances like a corrupt government, how they fight and rebel and revolt, or even get brainwashed by it. I also learned racism from this amazing book, my favorite book of all time, called The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. It's about this girl who witnesses her best friend Khalil being shot. He's a black boy just because he reached for something that the cops thought was a gun. And this kind of police shooting and brutality was so well and articulately expressed, and I could not specify how well it has been written, the emotions that our character star goes through. It's just one of the best. I'd really recommend that book to read if you really want to understand the racism in America more. It also helps to understand trauma as well as racism among Black people. Other than journalism, which is newspapers and news reporting and articles, fiction is one of the other ways of showing your feelings towards problems like corrupt government and the demolition and the abuse of rights and powers, and various other problems like poverty and capitalism, racism, prejudice. All these issues are so well expressed and put through and written in fiction. And fiction also helps us empathize with characters who are given the lens from their perspective when we follow them. And we just follow them making all these choices and decisions in the story. And suddenly we have also the capacity to stop supporting the character that we are reading about because they do something so morally wrong and so ethically wrong that we are able to understand what is wrong and what is not. But we are also able to understand why they did, what pushed them to such lengths to do something like this, even though we wouldn't if we were in their place. So fiction teaches us to step into other people's shoes at the same time. Our life and their life are not very different, but not very same at the same time. And it really helps us to grow into the person that we want to be, which is better, which is to be sensitive to characters like this. Because characters are really not as different as you think from us. We are all humans, have some qualities that are similar among everyone, common among everyone. And that's what fiction helps us to realize. We also get to see a lot of relationships being explored, many kinds of relationships being explored, which is love triangles, same-sex relationships, platonic relationships, and really toxic relationships too. I am actually really curious about how relationships work out in books, because sometimes I learn that some relationships are not very well written, and that also gives me a great lesson as to how they could also be written. What feels real, what doesn't feel real. Like when you see a Netflix movie, you're like, this is so unrealistic that this won't even happen. Or the same way, it's also so well played out, so well written out in books, in contemporary romance books a lot. I like to see relationships grow, and if love triangles are done right, again, I like it. But if it's not and one person is always left behind, I hate that. I hate that trope so much. So some relationships are so well written, especially when I really like seeing friendships turn into a love, or the fake friendship into real love, which is in Red, White, and Royal Blue. Really great book. I just like how humans interact with each other when you see them grow in a relationship. One of my most favorite book, which concentrate on a very great banter between two characters, the sort of chemistry between two characters, is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Elias Sainz. So other than The Hate You Give, that is actually one of my favorite contemporary YA romance books, and it's a same-sex relationship where there are these two 15-year-olds who meet during a summer vacation, and they are just so beautiful. And I love when books include their parents too. Sometimes, often in YA, I've noticed that, or in generally a lot of romance books, they do not include parents. They're like a really blurred background. But in some books, when they are actually involved in the story, it makes the story so much more real and so much more fun and so much more necessarily dramatic, and that should be explored a lot more, and it gives us insight into how families also work. They feel real, right? When you read, you're like, oh my god, yes, my family member actually behaves like that. Oh my god, yes, that is so true. A lot of family members behave like that. So that is such an important factor to be contributed into fiction, and I think it should be done more. Fiction also makes me feel experienced in the fields of trauma, horror, grief, and death. But if you're having a conversation with someone and they tell you that they're feeling a certain way, and they tell you that no, you do not, you as in when they're addressing you, that you do not understand, please do not argue with them saying that no, I read and hence I understand, because sometimes what they're going through is very different from what you have read. Even though you understand a little bit, you do not get the entire story. So please don't argue with your friend or whoever they may be saying that I completely get that. No, you do not. It is not completely the same, because fiction is supposed to make you an understanding person. It is supposed to make you a very good listener. That's right. You're supposed to be a very good listener to your friend when they're talking about their feelings. When you hear more, when you read more, it helps you to understand that person rather than allow you to show off what you have learned from your experience. So I have a few closing remarks before I end this video for today, which is that fiction shows you your mirror. because it shows you what kind of principles you have when you agree or disagree with a character. And the whole point of putting conflict in a fictional novel is to make you rationally and emotionally think as a reader. And fiction shapes you, but you are the director, which basically means that you have to decide how you want fiction to shape you as a reader, as a human being, with your imagination and your intellect and with your wisdom. Bye bye.